Hey, manufacturing world, welcome to another episode of Shop Matters, sponsored by Okuma America Corporation. We are coming to you from a special event. We are live from IMTS 2022 here in the AMT Influencers Lounge. And joining me today, I've got Malachi from Elite Automation. So welcome, Malachi.
Thanks for having me.
All right. So give us a little introduction and tell me a little bit about your background. How'd you get started in automation?
Yeah, sure. So, I'm Malachi Greb. I'm CEO of Elite Automation. I started out and spent my entire career in automation around the manufacturing space, a lot of automotive glass. And I kind of stumbled into this. I was young. I knew I needed to go to college. I didn't have much direction on what I should do for college. And so I went into my local community college. I was like, what can I do? What should I do? And there's, a mechanic, a welder, listing off some different things. And they said, there's this automation thing. I'm like, oh, okay, what's that? And they started listing off the different things in automation. And then they got to robots. And I'm like, that's the one. Let's do that one, okay?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I think it's so cool that you were able to actually zero in on what really excited you. I mean, when I was growing up, I got into manufacturing because it's kind of what my dad did, all the people around us. That's where the halfway high-paying jobs were.
Yeah.
So I got into it somewhat by default. I didn't think that's what I would do long-term wise. And I always said, I don't know what I want to do when I grow up. I've been saying that for the last 20 years almost. But I think it's super cool that you were able to go listen to it, and as soon as you heard the robotics, something just triggered, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. I was like, I just knew the other things weren't for me. And another big thing is, I thought about manufacturing. I kind of knew about it, but I knew I didn't want to go into the same building every day. That was one of the big things for me. And so with system integration, you're in different buildings, you're going checking out different customers' facilities, everything's different.
So for people listening to us that don't really know what systems integration means, kind of define that. What does that mean? What is a systems integration?
Yeah, so systems integrators, a lot of systems integrators are niched down to a certain area. Maybe they're in foundries, maybe they're doing packaging, maybe they're doing palletizing, welding. And for us as a company, we are kind of just still finding where our hone is. I personally came from material handling, did a lot of automotive glass, vision location. And as we've grown as a company, we've actually kind of organically brought on a lot of welders who've done a lot of robotic weld applications throughout their career. And so as we hire, we're hiring other experts of the field that have dealt with robotics throughout the entirety of their career. And so now I think we're over 100 plus years of robotic weld experience. So that's really guiding us to go towards robotic welding, which initially when starting the company wasn't the direction, right? It's more on the material handling side of things.
Sure. Yep. And then you have to deal a lot with the safety aspects of it, right? As an integrator, you really take on the responsibility of the safety components of tying in the automation to any process you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Funny thing is, I went back when I worked for the employer that I worked with. One of my first steps outside of just doing controls engineering was I did the risk assessments. I was the safety guy.
Okay.
So I was doing all the safety engineering, all the risk assessment stuff for that company to ensure the systems were safe and whatnot.
Okay. So when you start on a process, kind of step me through. What does that typically look like when customers reach out and say, hey, we want to look at automating a process? They reach out to Elite Automation. How do you begin?
Sure.
What are the steps that you walk through?
So the first thing is we identify what level of automation that customer already has, right?
Okay.
Are they a customer that has no automation whatsoever, and so they have no clue what's going on within the automation realm of things? Or do they already have a couple robotic cells, or do they have entire lines that are robotic? Sometimes they've already automated certain processes where they automate each one of those things, and then they get to a point where they don't know where to go after that. So we'll come in and we'll offer kind of our expertise on hey, I think you should automate this or automate that, and identifying these things based on an ROI, right? What's going to get them their most return? Or what kind of pains are they dealing with? Is it employment? Maybe they're struggling to keep people in a certain job. There's some things where it's a back-breaking job. We did one application where it's the 50-gallon water drums.
Right.
And I mean, that's just a terrible job to do, just throwing them, palletizing them all day, every day. And so that was an ergonomic type of thing. So we're identifying what that particular issue is, and then from there solving that problem.
Okay. One of the things I've noticed over the last several years as I've been coming to IMTS, and we're seeing the transition in automation. But obviously, I work in the machine tool industry, and a lot of the automation we deal with is either gantries or robots primarily.
Yeah.
And there's a big transition, or at least an influence from the industrial robot to the collaborative robot. You know, you get the the universal robot. Now Fanuc has their CRX systems, things like that. Is there a linear transition? I mean, is there a transition point where you would recommend customers go one way or the other? Or do you look at certain applications that lead you down one path versus the other?
Deployment speed is probably one of the primary things that I look at. Or if you need to do something where you have to interface in that area, where if it's a headache to have to try to, like, if you have to go into a cell, stop the robot from doing what it's doing, and you already kind of have like a fast cycle time and the robot needs to be moving all the time, that's something you want more of a collaborative robot with, right? If you actually have to work around that robot quite frequently. Whereas, you know, if it's something where you don't have to work around the robot a lot, the robot can just kind of tend itself, maybe it does make sense to still go traditional, because traditional can be cheaper, but then you got to think about the infrastructure of having a fence cage around it, and a lot of times
area sensors.
It's not as adaptable, right? Like if you wanted to, we can, like, this one thing that we'll do is we'll design systems where, let's say, for instance, we set up like a station to work with your machine. Well, maybe this particular machine that you have, the CNC that you have, operates a certain model of part, right? Well, we'll put some type of common fixturing so that way you're able to actually remove this robot from this location, take it to another location, and there's locator pins on that next system that locks it in, and you can go into your teach pendant and change what program that robot runs so you can actually operate that same robot on a different CNC machine.
Right. Make it more deployable to different applications.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, very good. Something I've noticed as I walk around, and it's a space that I want to get a lot more involved in and do more learning myself on it, but the AGV space. 2018 timeframe, I spent some time at EMO and got to see a lot of different applications where they were using AGVs with machine tools. And I've noticed as I've walked around the show here, I'm seeing a lot more AGVs kind of enter the marketplace that I didn't see 4 years ago when I was here. Tell me your experience with AGVs, and are you seeing a trend? Are you seeing a growth pattern in that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think AMRs is like one of the biggest revolutions that we have in our industry. Realistically, I think we have kind of three big revolutions: AMRs, collaborative robots, and bin picking. Those three things are new opportunities that we were not able to, or new tools, right? They're new tools that we did not have the opportunity to be able to utilize in the past. Like with the bin picking situation, before you couldn't pick repetitively out of a bin to be able to service like a CNC machine.
Right.
And same with the AMRs. Like we're doing quite a bit of AMRs and adding like conveyor top modules to them. For one of our customers, we've consolidated half of their employees. So they were an injection molding company, and they have an operator at every single station. Each injection molding machine is about 30 feet away from one another, and the cycle time is like a minute 20.
Wow.
So there's plenty of cycle time there to only have one operator, but you don't have the cycle time if the operator has to walk back and forth.
Right.
So what we did is we had the AMR go to the injection molding machine, convey from the conveyor at the injection molding machine onto the AMR, and then take that molded piece over to where the operator's at and dispense that part onto another conveyor, a buffer conveyor, for the operator to then have both parts right there in a single operator station.
No kidding. That's interesting. What about inspection? Do you get involved much with gauging, inspection equipment, things of that nature? Yeah,
I mean, most of we kind of avoid inspection anymore because the risk that goes into it.
Yeah.
I mean, especially like when you're dealing with stuff like paint, like it's such a hard defect to detect. Definitely like vision location is still more of the thing that we do. Also like dispense measurements, like things like that. We're doing some stuff like that.
Okay.
But yeah.
Part rejection from the vision systems?
Yeah. I mean, we do stuff like that. It's like we're very particular on what we choose, right? To be in all honesty, like it has a higher risk level for a systems integrator. There's some systems integrators, that's all they did. Matter of fact, that's what I came from, right?
Okay.
I came from systems integrator that they had their own proprietary vision system. They used Keyence, they used Cognex, and I was the guy programming a lot of that stuff.
Okay.
But it's just kind of one of those things where it's higher risk, right? You don't. It's so hard to have 100% success rate, right? You're gonna be able to detect 98% of parts, 95% of parts, and then what do you do about the other 5% that you're missing?
So you mentioned bin picking earlier. That's something we get involved in a lot, obviously on the machine tool side of things. A lot of times parts are presented to machines in crates and things of that nature. What all goes into bin picking and presenting work pieces in a way that a gantry or even just repositioning to load into a machine?
Sure. So the big thing is the bin picking vision software has just come such a far way.
Now, is that something that's provided by the OEM, like the robot OEMs, or are those third-party bin picking software?
So you have Fanuc that has their own proprietary bin picking, but then you also have your companies like Keyence. I believe Cognex has one. Pickett has one. And the other cool thing is the bin picking. One of the other features that's in those now is not only the location of the part itself, but it's actually feeding a path to the robot. So you have an above position, and then the actual vision system itself is telling which way the wrist should orient as it's going down to pick the part.
Oh, wow.
And so that's something that's super incredible with those. Is it's you set it up, you teach everything, and then from there it kind of does its own calculations to decide where it should move to pick up that part.
So I'm assuming you're teaching like a safe position above the bin,
Yep.
and then from there it's figuring out its own path?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and then with that, then we'll pair some things with it as far as maybe some fixturing to do double location. Maybe we identified where the part's at, we picked it, but then we need to do some more centering for fine-tune placement to the end location.
Okay. Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
So far, out of all the projects you worked on, what's the coolest one? If I know sometimes these things are proprietary and you can't, share certain details, but what's the thing that you're most proud of? What's the coolest thing you've done?
I definitely love the AMR stuff that we do.
Okay.
Because it's a newer thing in the space. A lot of people haven't even touched them yet.
Right.
And I think we've deployed to 9 different locations now. So.
Okay.
Yeah, I love the AMRs, and also doing the creative things. The future is going to be way, way different when it comes to AMRs. We've done stuff like adding conveyor top modules and some lift tables and stuff like that, but it's going to get a lot more technologically advanced. You're seeing some companies put robots on top of the AMR.
That's where we're headed.
Yeah.
So, from an interfacing standpoint, are you just tying that into a PLC? You're creating your own interfacing and then tying that to. So, and I may be jumping ahead of where you are, but I'm kind of working through this in my mind as I'm talking. But you're tying in an AMR to a robot, the robot to the machine at that point.
Yeah. So this also depends on the application. So smaller applications, you can do. You can set it up as simply as having discrete signals. The AMR saying, "Hey, I'm here." You're sending a signal to a relay that tells the PLC that, "Hey, the AMR is here."
Okay.
And so that's kind of the most reduced down level of it. You can also say for like Mir, they have Modbus TCP, so it can communicate over Modbus to a PLC if you want to. So that way you can have more of a data communication. You can share data between the two. And then they're also using a REST API type of system where you can now send that over the network. You can have it. You can call it from basically the offices, right? The office can tell it what paths it needs to run, what jobs need to happen. So based off because some companies are going all the way from pressing the purchase button on their website to having an AMR go and grab the product off the shelf.
Right. Okay. As an integrator, do you get tied to a certain brand? Do you get brand loyal? So do you get used to using a Fanuc or a Yaskawa or I could name 100 different robots, but do you wind up kind of finding your niche and saying, okay, this is the brand that I get comfortable with and I want to stick with, or do you really become more fluent with all the different brands? Are they similar enough that you can transition from one to the other fairly quickly?
Yeah, so this is different for every systems integrator. Some systems integrators want to go with a robot and stick with a robot. For us, it depends on the platform. So like robot, we're kind of all over the place. We have a lot of robot-specific engineers, so they're used to programming different robots. You know, my background is more of the FANUC robots, some of Yaskawa, whereas like some of our other team members are much more on the KUKA, which I have like a lot less experience with, which has given us a very diverse, platforms that we've worked with. But then when it comes to some things like vision systems, pretty much sticking with like Keyence, Cognex, LMI. So we're not going as wide on that. Also AMRs, we are primarily doing mirror right now. Okay. We're in discussions with becoming a partner with Omron. But you know, that right there's kind of goes into like our expertise, right? Like if we don't have a huge inflow of orders, like I said, we deployed like AMRs to like 9 different locations. Well, if we deployed each one of those using a different AMR, then like that would have been a learning curve on each one of those. We wouldn't have be able to become as good as we are with mirror. So like that's the main one we're deploying right now. So now our engineers are getting better at working with the mirror system, the mirror platform, and kind of learning its quirks, finding ways to work around the things that don't perform as well, and just becoming better engineers at those products. Right.
Very cool. So when did you arrive to IMTS? Is this your first day, or were you here yesterday?
I was here yesterday as well.
Okay.
Yep.
So what's the coolest thing you've seen so far? Anything that just made your jaw drop as you walked around?
I mean, we're robotics fans, so anything robot related. Okay. I was definitely wowed by how big the FANUC booth is this year. Yeah. I mean, it's just wild.
Yeah. Like, I was surprised all the collaborative robots they've got. You know, I knew the CRX was coming out, and we saw them at some of the other trade shows, but they really got a large display this year. And then they've got a AGV as well tied with a collaborative robot that piqued my interest as well. So I'm interested to see where they go with that product. There's a lot of things that we want to do in that space as well. So, and every year they do the car lift. You know, that's always a eye catcher. People love that one, all the social media guys. They want to get video clips of it and things. So that's always fun. But all right, how long are you here for?
Probably all week.
All week? All right.
We're only scheduled to be here Thursday, but that's just because we didn't know it was Friday and Saturday as well.
Now, is this your first IMTS?
First IMTS.
Okay. Yep. All right.
This year, though, we've been on tour as a company, so like we're kind of going around, and we've been to almost every single event that's been out this year. So we're just like in a discovery phase of like what event is the right event for us, what makes the most sense, and then overall just meeting people, making good connections, friends with everybody that's out here.
And you're big in the marketing space, right? So tell me a little bit about how you use marketing, the social media aspect. I mean, where do you see your strengths on that, and where are you going with that in the future?
Sure. So I mean, a big thing is like it comes down to execution, right? Like people just starting with posting content. Don't worry about editing fancy stuff. Like organic content performs much better. There's pictures of me in a cabinet doing some wiring or something like that. They got 30,000 views, and there's a picture that was edited and took 2 hours to edit. They got 30 views. You know, so somebody just starting just to post content. You know, that's the big thing is like execute on what we do. We have a fairly small marketing team. I think maybe 5 people now or something like that. But like for the amount of people that we have on our marketing team, like our outputs are like really high. Our growth has been super high. And in 3 years, we've got to like 10,000 followers on LinkedIn for our business page. I'm at like 14K on my personal page, a couple thousand on YouTube. Yeah. And a lot of that content has either been like educational, it's just been informative, like what's going on. Like that's another reason why we come out to these events is like capturing content. We'll post it up on YouTube, so that way people can see what's going on at these events, seeing what type of things there are to see.
What's the latest in technology? What's the newest stuff on the marketplace? So
absolutely.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, hey, it's been great chatting with you. I really appreciate your time, taking the time to come visit with me. I know it's a busy show. There's a lot to do and see here, but I appreciate your time here today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.